Before I start, I just want to say if you love real-life stories that begin quietly but stay with you for years, the kind that seem ordinary at first, yet come back to you late at night when you're thinking about life, make sure you subscribe. Stories like this remind us how gentle, unpredictable, and surprisingly meaningful everyday life can be. Now let me tell you about a moment that lasted no more than 10 seconds, yet somehow never left me. I never imagined that one slightly awkward, completely innocent moment in my kitchen would become a memory I'd carry for years. Not because anything dramatic happened. Not because it changed my marriage. Not because it was scandalous, heartbreaking, or life-changing. It stayed with me because it made me stop and notice something. And sometimes, that's all a moment has to do. My name is Claire Matthews. I'm 33 years old, and for the last 6 years I've lived in a quiet neighborhood in Springfield, Illinois. It's the kind of place where life rarely feels rushed. Lawns are trimmed every Saturday. Neighbors wave even if they can't remember your name. You can hear dogs barking from a few houses away and children riding their bikes as the sun begins to set. Predictable. Peaceful. Safe. I've been married to my husband, Daniel, for almost 10 years. A decade filled with shared grocery lists, shared bills, inside jokes, comfortable silences, and ordinary routines. We were never the dramatic couple. No explosive arguments. No movie-worthy declarations of love. Just a steady relationship that, from the outside, might seem uneventful, but from the inside, always felt like home. Our days followed a familiar rhythm. Morning coffee together at the kitchen counter while sunlight spilled across the backsplash. My shift at the local library, where the biggest emergency was usually an overdue book. Dinner together around 6. A short evening walk if the weather was kind. Then a television show we'd both pretend to watch before falling asleep. For a long time, I believed life was simply a collection of small, manageable days. Then one quiet Thursday afternoon gently reminded me that even the calmest lives can be interrupted by moments that change the way we see the world. The weather was perfect. Not too hot, not too humid, just that comfortable late summer warmth where the air carries the scent of freshly cut grass and the sunshine feels soft instead of harsh. I had mellow acoustic music playing while I cooked. The kitchen smelled of lemon, rosemary, and garlic because I was genuinely trying to impress my friend Megan. We hadn't seen each other in months, and she was one of those people who could make even the simplest meal look like it belonged on the cover of a cooking magazine. Earlier that day, Daniel mentioned that his coworker, Ethan, might stop by to return a screwdriver he'd borrowed. I'd only met Ethan a handful of times. He was tall, polite, easygoing, and always wore the kind of relaxed smile that made it seem like nothing in the world ever bothered him. A nice guy. Nothing more. By late afternoon, the house had entered that familiar stage of pre-dinner chaos. Towels had been moved. The counters had been wiped twice. Candles I'd claimed not to care about were carefully arranged exactly where I wanted them. As I finished setting the dining table, I suddenly remembered the basket of bread rolls I'd left in the pantry. That's when it happened. I bent down to grab the basket from the bottom shelf, quietly humming along with the music, completely wrapped up in my role as the evening's host. The wooden floor creaked behind me. Then I heard footsteps. Close. Much closer than I expected. I turned around so quickly that my heart jumped before my mind had time to understand why. Standing just behind me was Ethan, holding the screwdriver. For a brief second, we both froze. Not because anything strange had happened. Not because the moment was inappropriate. We were simply startled. "Oh, sorry, Claire," he said with an embarrassed smile. "I didn't mean to sneak up on you." I laughed too, though it sounded thinner than I intended. "I didn't even hear you come in." Daniel must have let him through the side door while he was outside watering the garden. Around here, neighbors and friends often walked in without knocking. Familiarity had long replaced formalities. Even so, there was a tiny flash of awkwardness. Nothing uncomfortable. Nothing inappropriate. Just that very human awareness of suddenly standing much closer to someone than expected, like stepping into an elevator and realizing you're almost shoulder to shoulder with a stranger. It lasted only a heartbeat. Ethan glanced at the basket in my hands. "Big dinner tonight?" "I'm trying to impress my friend," I replied as I placed the basket on the counter. "She's a much better cook than I am." We chatted for barely a minute about recipes, cooking disasters, and how impossible it was to get homemade bread just right. It was an ordinary conversation. Completely harmless. Then Daniel walked into the kitchen, drying his hands on a towel, and the moment disappeared as naturally as it had arrived. But here's the strange part. That tiny interaction, 10 seconds at most, refused to leave my mind. Not because of Ethan. Not because I felt attracted to him. Not because I carried any guilt. It stayed with me because it interrupted the quiet rhythm of an otherwise ordinary day. It reminded me that life isn't simply a straight path made of carefully planned moments. Sometimes all it takes is turning around and finding someone where you didn't expect them to be for your mind to wake up in a completely different way. The rest of the evening was wonderful. Megan arrived fashionably late, full of energy and stories as always. We laughed until tears rolled down our faces. Wine glasses clinked together. Conversations overlapped as everyone tried to tell their funniest story at the same time. Yet every so often, my thoughts drifted back to that moment in the pantry, almost as if my mind had quietly slipped a bookmark into that memory without asking my permission. At the time, I couldn't explain why. Over the following weeks, I noticed something subtle had changed inside me. I started paying attention to the little moments I'd always overlooked. The stranger at the grocery store who held the door open and smiled as though we'd shared some unspoken joke about the weather. The elderly man at the library who thanked me with genuine emotion after I found him a novel he'd loved 50 years earlier. The mother waiting at a red light beside me, making ridiculous faces just to hear her toddler laugh from the back seat. Tiny moments. Brief intersections between ordinary lives. And then I realized something that had somehow escaped me for years. Most of life isn't built from major milestones. It's built from small encounters. Quick glances. Half-finished conversations. Shared spaces. Unexpected smiles. Those quiet moments often stay with us far longer than expensive vacations or grand celebrations. A few months later, Daniel and I invited Ethan and his wife over for a game night. The evening was exactly what you'd expect, loud, fun, full of laughter and harmless competition. At one point I even told the pantry story as a joke. Sounds like a dramatic title for the most boring story ever, someone laughed. Everyone joined in. I laughed too. But privately, the memory still meant something deeper. It reminded me that being alive isn't only about the big chapters of our lives. It's about constantly brushing against the lives of other people in small, unexpected ways. For a few seconds, our paths cross. Then we keep walking. And somehow, those quiet crossings become the memories that stay with us the longest.